Ready?
1 second.
It's a recording.
It's recording.
Good evening and welcome to Unforced lockdown week 4 for the UK. I'm not sure in other countries what it is. Antonio, are you speaking to us tonight from England or
Hello,
where are you
guys.
speaking from?
I'm in Macau. So the
Ah,
very first lockdown was much earlier. It was in end of January, and Macau was locked down for a month or so. And people started going out. Nowadays, like you can already go out for sports, play tennis, ping pong. All the activities are already open. Schools not open yet, but yeah, we are on the way to
Normality.
slowly, start.
so you're
opening.
ahead of David and us in the UK in terms of lockdown. That's good. And I should just say it's David, Jim, and Antonio. Tonight we are discussing favourite tennis players of all time, the FOAT, F-O-A-T, to coin a phrase. Yeah, can I ask if I bring you in, David? You've been thinking about it. How many of your favourite players would you say are still playing now?
I was looking and making the list of my favorite players of all the time since I've started watching tennis, which started in the 80s and 90s with Agassi and Sampras and Becker and all those players from that era. But most of the favorite players actually are from these days, men and women. But I'm very curious, who is going to be the first one to say one of his favorite players?
Well, did you guys make lists? Did you make a top 10 or?
More or less.
Maybe we could go.
Yeah,
we could
more
go
or less.
Historically.
Historically. I like
Yes.
that.
Good idea. The oldest player first.
Antonio, by the way, if you didn't know, Jim is ancient. He's from the last century.
I'm very old.
Yeah. He can definitely go way beyond us. He can go back to the Lendls and McEnroes.
Fred Perry.
Guys, when I was hearing your podcast these months and I was hearing your conversation, I was trying to idealize Jim because I've never saw Jim, and now I have the opportunity. And I was seeing someone on the 60s or 70s.
Life is full of disappointments.
And now I see it's this young gentleman.
I've got a good surgeon.
Okay, so maybe start with your first favorites when you started, following tennis for the first time.
Good idea. Well, when did you start following tennis, Antonio? And how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm 34 now. So I started watching tennis when I was 8 or 9 years old.
Uh-huh.
So we're talking about 93, 94. So my sisters were studying in the German school, so they were kind of biased, and they also loved tennis by then. And we were all mega fans of Boris Becker and Steffi Graf. And in that time, I remember that there were very big fights in between Boris Becker and Pete Sampras. It's the time that Boris Becker started losing to Pete Sampras, so it was kind of sad for us.
Damn.
And what did you like about Boris Becker compared to Pete Sampras? Say, what made you think Boris was your favourite compared to Pistol Pete?
Actually, in terms of style and everything, I think I started developing more like a player that I liked. I would say that I would like more Agassi, for example, than Boris Becker. I was a little bit driven by my sisters to be a Boris Becker fan. Of course, he was a very good player, monster player.
Excellent.
Yeah, excellent player, but
excellent indeed. 6
honestly,
Grand Slams.
nowadays I wouldn't choose him as one of my favorites nowadays.
Yeah, because it was the style, and
yeah, there was some salt that was missing in Boris Becker, in my perspective.
Yeah. Antonio, can you tell Jim and everybody that is listening as well how your love for tennis started?
Yeah, actually, I started doing Olympic gymnastics, and when I came to Macau, we started playing tennis every day. Yeah, I was doing gymnastics in Portugal until I was 9, and I came to Macau, and actually my parents were expecting that in China, right, Olympic gymnastics should be huge, but in Macau there was no Olympic gymnastics.
Nothing.
So I started playing tennis every day against the wall, in my building, and then with two friends we joined tennis and we started playing. That's how it started. Yeah.
Good. Well, Boris Becker was a bit of a gymnast himself. He used to fling himself around on the grass and that, and do those kind of rolls as well. And,
Yes, it's true.
make easy shots look difficult, but yeah, great, really exciting to watch. So he was a bit of a gymnast. Maybe that influenced your early love of Boris.
There's definitely a
Yes.
connection there. Boris was a really great player. I started tennis with Agassi. I've learned to play tennis with Agassi.
Guys, did you find on your lists that most of your favourite players are the kind of players you play like, their style, or do you find some people on your list play a completely different style to yours?
I think that I do not have any player. If we jump into Federer, which is probably my favorite player of all time.
Well, we have to mention him.
Ba-boom! There's no escaping.
Then there is probably.
But who plays like?
Exactly, that's where I want to go. Like, I don't play his style because he's like, he plays everything pretty much. Like, for example, Pete Sampras, serve and volley, was never like the type of players that I was in love with.
Jim, you're going to help us here. Agassi was one of the first to start really staying in the baseline and dominating from the back.
Well, yes. There's a myth that Bjorn Borg, who's one of my favourite players, the Swedish player, I don't know if you're familiar with him. Bjorn Borg from the late 70s, early 80s, who won Wimbledon 5 times in a row. He was a baseline player. He used to win the French Open most of the times. He was Nadal before Nadal in terms of his record.
There you go.
But then he switched to Wimbledon when there was less of a break, and the myth was he won it from the baseline. But if you watch old clips of it, he actually did come into the net quite a bit. Then after Borg, it was the serve volleyers took over. You had Becker, you had Edberg, who was a great serve volleyer, and you'd have these men's singles matches, hardly any rallies, which personally I found very boring, where both players where it was a mad dash to the net on each occasion. Pat Cash was another. But then Agassi came along, and he was just such a good returner that he won it mainly from the baseline. He tried to do everything with every shot, which was a bit of advice McEnroe gave him before he won Wimbledon. And he really changed it. And the grass courts slowed down, and I think people were getting so bored of serve and volley, they might have kind of made the courts a bit slower, which I like, but a lot of people miss the serve and volley days.
Yes.
So Borg and Connors were two of my favourites, baseline players, but they take the opportunity to come to the net. And then Agassi changed it all again. And then Mr. Federer kind of changed it back in his early days.
Yes, the Federer is almost like influenced lots of players to start doing it. It's funny you say that you're kind of bored with the serve and volley, because on the conversation we were hearing from these old dudes, Lendl and Becker and
great conversation.
McEnroe, great conversation. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, Verlander.
And they're saying that they are bored now with the players in the back hitting baseline rallies forever and ever. I think a mix of both is really good, isn't it? Federer definitely has that recipe, and it's wonderful to see.
Yeah.
So when you were a kid, Jim, you started by watching this from the era before Agassi and Sampras, and then merge into the era of Agassi and Sampras.
But it all joins up. Connors played Agassi several times and gave him some really good matches. Agassi won at the end of Connors' career. McEnroe played Agassi at the end of his career. Then Agassi at the end of his career played Nadal and played Federer in several Grand Slam finals. They've all kind of played someone who's played one of the other old greats.
Yeah, exactly.
So it all joins up. It really does.
Did you like McEnroe, Jim?
I did. He's on my list just about. But Antonio, I would tell you, at the time, I was a real Connors man who was hated in tennis circles, whereas McEnroe used to misbehave on courts just the same as Jimmy Connors.
Yeah.
With Connors, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek. It was a bit pantomime. But with McEnroe, it was serious, like a toddler throwing a tantrum.
Yes.
What I like about McEnroe and why he's in my top 10, just near the bottom of the top 10, is I really love watching him on the veterans circuit. He's aged very well. Whereas Borg, who won more Grand Slams, can't play tennis anymore. He can't mix it with the veterans. And after he retired from tennis, Borg just lost his love of tennis, whereas McEnroe's always kept it up. And what I love about McEnroe, finally, is he has the balance between tennis and life. He has other interests. He loves playing the guitar. So like us three guys, he loves making music and tennis. He loves art. You know, he's done things like he's been a host on a quiz show. So I love the fact it's not just tennis with him. Unlike someone like Lendl, who probably slept with his tennis racket, he had the balance.
Yes.
So McEnroe's, to answer your question, McEnroe's on my list, but I preferred Connors and Borg from that tier.
Yeah, just to add to the McEnroe thing, and then he's a really fun commentator.
Very good.
Yeah, he's really good. So those were your 3 favorites from the era in the past?
Absolutely. Those were my 3 favourites. Lendl less so, though that conversation you referred to on YouTube between Lendl, McEnroe, Becker and Wilander. Wow, Lendl was a revelation. Lots of insights, lots of honesty, and a lot more personality than I realised that he has. He always hid it. But now the gloves are off and you can see just what an eloquent, articulate person he is.
He really is. That's why he was the favourite of my father. He loved Lendl because of his calmness. Always very calm and spoke very well. It was almost the first time I heard him speak. By the way, we keep mentioning this conversation on YouTube. So if you want to find it, just type Legends Podcast, Lendl, Becker, McEnroe, and Wilander. What about you, Antonio?
On the bottom, I would say the one I started with, probably Boris Becker.
There you go.
But it's
good.
Time has moved on.
It's like it moved on. Yeah, I mean, like it's funny because not many days ago I was watching a match. It was like 88 or something, and Boris Becker was playing. It seemed very mechanical in some way, like a machine. You know, like a really good machine. It's funny because when I was young and I started playing tennis, I don't know about you guys. If you guys started to play tennis in the same time as you started watching tennis.
Yeah.
Yes. They were connected.
More or less.
Yeah, so I started playing tennis in Macau. I don't know if Jim knows. It's a very small place. So we were maybe we were around at the time, maybe 30, 40 kids playing tennis. And we get the chance to go to Hong Kong to play the season.
Yeah.
Hong Kong is just across.
A bit more professional in Hong Kong, by the way.
Exactly. So 4 of us had the chance to do the season, and I went to play. And my coach used to call me McEnroe. Because the kids would just lob the ball when we were 9 years old and pass the ball to the other side, and I would just get and after long rallies I would just miss, and then I would get frustrated and sometimes
throw a tantrum.
Break my racket. When I was 9 years
I was the same. I was called McEnroe in England. I would just lose it. I wanted to be like Borg, but I was like McEnroe. Can I throw a name in now? Now we've mentioned Becker and McEnroe.
Shoot.
Yes.
Is this person on your list? Because he's a similar. We're going Borg, McEnroe, Sampras, Agassi. Slightly later, actually straddling Sampras and Agassi, Ivanisevic. Was he on either of your lists? Because he's on mine. I love the Ivanisevic.
Definitely not on mine. I did like him. He was a spectacular player in terms of power.
Yeah.
But of course, he drove me and Agassi crazy so many times. With those serves that it was him and Philippoussis as well. Oh, he was just and Sampras was doing the same, man. He was just I hated.
Exactly.
I only started liking aces when Federer started hitting them.
Well, the first time I ever saw Ivanisevic, he was a young player at Wimbledon, and he was playing a British player, and he was match point down, Ivanisevic, and he did an ace on his second serve.
Oh, wow.
And I fell in love with him ever since then, because aces are boring, but on your second serve, when you're match point down,
impressive.
I thought this guy is a bit different. Most people, Becker included, and I've seen this, match point down, would just try and get that second serve just to dolly over the net.
Yeah.
But Ivanisevic just went for it.
You need some balls to serve a second serve ace on match point down. It's very impressive. I only can think of one person that does that these days. Curious.
We'll come to him very soon.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
very soon. Okay,
I'll tell you who we haven't mentioned though. What about ladies?
Who were your favorites back in the day?
I used to like Steffi Graf. It's funny that I got emotional about Monica Seles because of the standing when I was a kid, and I
very sad.
It was so sad, and she was. I'm not sure you guys know better than me, but I think she won her Grand Slam when she was really young, 17 or,
Yeah.
or something like this. Obviously, we cannot go without saying
Who?
Serena Williams.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, you've opened a
would-
can of worms here.
With Jim here, it's going to be a good conversation. We're going to get to Serena Williams, guys.
yes,
Definitely.
even though
You've said it now, Antonio. You said it now.
even though I like her sister more as a
Mhm,
Yes,
person.
I agree.
Obviously.
I agree.
Venus.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of Serena as a person.
Definitely.
I'm a
No,
fan
no.
of Serena as a tennis player because she's just outrageous. Maybe the best.
Incredible
Yeah.
power and shots. And
Yeah, I would say
achievements.
maybe even the best amongst like men and male and female
Women.
in what concerns to what she
To the
achieves.
dominance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dominance.
dominance, yeah.
It's funny you say that, Antonio, because and I was going to tease Jim a little bit on this because on my list over here of favorite players,
Where's the exit button? Where's the exit button?
Serena is also there, and of course, not for her personality, but for. I mean, there's two ways we can look at favorites, at least in my opinion. And we can mix them together or we can separate them. The person, who the person is, and the tennis the person plays.
Yeah.
Now you can mix together and have a beautiful.
That's a good.
Yeah, because you can have a mix between both. Federer, for example, is both. The personality is really attractive and the tennis is beautiful. So
Yeah.
it's great. But Serena, I put her on my list as exactly because of that. Because watching her play is quite a sight.
I can
No.
respect that. Agassi's on my list. I won't say where. I'm not going to give away who the number one is just yet. But I don't like Agassi the person. He wrote a great book, and I love it. It's one of the best books I've ever read. But I don't actually warm to him as a person much.
There you go.
But the player, one of my favorite. He's still my favorite, despite the personality. But sometimes the personality I dislike so much that I cannot name them in my top 10.
And here's where Serena comes in for you.
With a gun against my head, I will sign my own name. I'm not signing their name.
Antonio, that is the way Jim feels about Serena. We had this conversation a few times. And I completely respect that. Over the years, has had some attitudes sometimes that are difficult to, for people to accept or to. So it's difficult to love her fully unless you really am, just a true fan of and enjoys how she is. She can be feisty and powerful. So going back a little bit, I definitely have on my list of oldies Ingis. What about you guys? What do you think about Ingis back in the day?
Do you know, I've forgotten her. Yeah, I really liked the Swiss Miss, and she was a great player, great doubles player. She's had a few brushes with drugs tests, hasn't she?
Yes.
I think cocaine, recreational. But like Sellers, like Antonio said earlier, she achieved at a very young age.
Yes.
And she probably didn't have the power to compete with the Williams sisters. She relied more on kind of skill and shot selection. And she could be overpowered a bit by Lindsay Davenport. It's another one of my favorite players.
I remember her.
But yeah, I think that's a good call. Yeah, Hingis.
And of course, Monica Seles, to complement what Antonio said, she could have been the best of all time. Who knows?
Exactly.
Maybe if there was no stabbing, because she was coming for Steffi Graf, and it was that fan from Steffi Graf.
She won one Grand Slam after the stabbing, just one more Grand Slam.
Can you believe that? And she was.
I think. What do you guys think? I think like in some way it became like an unknown zone if Steffi Graf was gonna have what she had if
definitely
if Seles was not stabbed.
Yeah, exactly. We will never know,
right?
Because she was coming full force until she.
Yeah.
Did you know that the tournament she was stabbed in, Graf was playing in the same tournament?
Yes.
And Steffi Graf went to visit Seles in the hospital. And at the end of seeing her in the hospital, Monica Seles said to Graf, where are you going now? And she said, I'm going back to the tournament. I've made the final. And she made the final and got the number one spot back. So it's very sad. I mean, you can't really blame her. She had to carry on, I suppose. But it the bloke who stabbed her wanted Steffi Graf to get back to world number one.
Yes.
Steffi Graf would have been horrified. She didn't want that at all. But the stabber's main aim was realised. It did get Steffi Graf back to number one.
It's incredible. That changed history.
I didn't know that story.
It changed history.
Any other female names?
Yes, I have a few. Nali.
Who?
Nali.
Who's Gnarly?
Am I talking to tennis fans here?
It's that in 1920.
She won a Grand Slam just a few years ago.
Gnarly.
Nali. I knew I was going to come
Show
up.
me a picture. Show me a picture.
How do you spell that?
Nali was a Chinese player
Oh,
that won
sorry.
two Grand Slams. Two Grand Slams, the French Open and the Australian Open. And she had this tremendous power. And
I'm sorry.
She was amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I knew I was going to say somebody you wouldn't know, Jim.
Here's Denali. I thought you were making someone up.
Yeah. Go to Google.
Exactly.
Go to Google. WTA. She was number 2 in the world for a while. Number 2. The reason why I liked Nali not only is because of her game style, but because me and Antonio, we grew up in Asia, in China. So you have this emotional connection to the Asians. I can tell you another connection, a cultural connection that made me love a player that you probably are not going to know either. I'll be surprised if any of you know.
Make up another name.
Here we go. He was American, Malivai Washington.
No, I know him. Yeah, I know him. He reached the Wimbledon final.
He was very similar to Agassi.
In the year that a naked lady streaked across the court.
Oh, I remember that.
The final.
Yes.
And Washington lost the final.
So you know him.
Why Washington?
My favorite player and who got me into tennis was Agassi. I loved his personality. He was always interacting with the crowd. He was telling jokes. Then there was this George. He had the same style as Agassi. They were very similar, but Agassi was far superior. They were both very entertaining players.
I remember with Washington in the semi-finals in 1996. I think he was 5-love down in the 5th set against Todd Martin, and he came back to win the set. I think it was something like that. It might have been 5-1, but he came back, which Todd Martin must have been gutted about. But he faced the final.
Yeah.
And Antonio, so with Asian connections, do you find the same thing with your Macau background that you some of your favorite players are Asian?
Michael Chang was
now we're talking to another
Wow,
one of my favorites.
And
there you go.
But I was not a big fan of Michael Chang.
Michael Chang is in my list of favorites. If there was 3 favorites back in the day, was Agassi, Chang, and Washington. Chang was also a similar game style to Agassi.
Yeah, even earlier than Agassi, actually. He won the French Open when he was 17.
Yes.
There was that famous match where he served underarm to Lenzel, I think.
Yes, and the whole crowd booed him for the rest of the game, wasn't it? What the hell,
why not? It's in the rules.
Absolutely. Nowadays, they cheer if Kyrgios does that.
Nishikori. So does he fit your criteria?
Mine he does.
Yeah, me too. That's a good example of someone that is Asian and then became one player that was following a lot. And
Absolutely.
I was reading that Michael Chang used to be his coach.
He was,
actually.
just recently. I think they're still together or not. They were together just a few...
I think so.
Yeah, Nishikori kind of disappeared. When he beat Djokovic in the semis of one of these slams a few years ago, he looked like a ninja on court. He was spectacular.
Injuries,
yeah. He's also very haunted by injuries, just like Del Potro.
And that the serve, he could never quite beef up the second serve enough. It might have been a weakness there that he couldn't win cheap points on his serve.
It's amazing how the serve is an incredible advantage, which is something that those guys were talking about in that conversation, Jim. It was some good points about how the players nowadays don't hit their spots as well as they used to back in the era that you watched.
More power,
less accuracy nowadays, yeah.
Now, you mentioned a certain Djokovic. That's the first time he's been mentioned in the conversation. With both of you, how many of the big 4, and I can see David raising an eyebrow when I say the big 4, because
there's a problem here, man.
He thinks of the big 3,
4.
But for Antonio's benefit, in Great Britain, we refer to the big 4. So we have Andy Murray as one of the big guys. How many of the big 4 are in your favourites list?
I'm a huge fan of Federer, and I can go all in, right? Only one.
That's it. Roger Federer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Nadal is amazing, of course. Djokovic is amazing. Like all of them have like, yeah.
On my favorite players, Djokovic is there.
High up or at the bottom?
It's a bit difficult to figure out with Djokovic because he has some really great qualities. I mean, he's the best loser of all. He's the only guy that loses a Grand Slam final and goes and really hugs the opponent with feeling. He understands defeat in a level that
And
nobody else does.
Clap
And
during
he
the match.
always
Clap
claps, yes, to the great shots. Always. He's always the first one to say, hey, great shot, man. Not only he calls points to the opponent, even though the umpire didn't. So, I mean...
Yeah, that's nice.
And, well, I love the return of serve.
And perhaps the most important thing of all those qualities, David, that you didn't mention is you use the same racket that he does.
We use the same racket.
And that has to get him in your top 10, surely.
Absolutely. I love that.
I'm still very heartbroken
that
what concerns
final.
Djokovic.
Yeah.
Those final.
Yeah. It takes some getting over.
It really does. I think some people will never get over that defeat.
Yes.
Ever.
Well, to get over it, can I mention the name Andy Murray?
What is your favorite from the top four?
My favorite from the top four, it's a boring choice. I can't lie and be eccentric. It would have to be Roger Federer because I think he's the one player where I'd still love to watch a match, even if his opponent wasn't very good and Federer was beating him in straight sets easily and there was no tension or jeopardy. I'd rather watch him do that than watch the court next door where there was a 5-set match between most players.
Well said.
That's how much I enjoy watching him.
That's great.
But spoiler alert, he's not my favourite in the top 10 list, but I love watching him play. I love his grace. Then after that, I feel sorry for Djokovic, and he almost made my top 10 list because I think crowds are very harsh on him. That Wimbledon final, there seemed to be so few people cheering for him apart from the actual Serbians in the crowd. To step on court must be so hard for him. Nearly every time he steps on court, the crowd want him to lose unless he's playing in Serbia. And I think he's very underrated. As they said in the YouTube conference today, the depth he gets on his shots.
It's ridiculous.
Even if it's a serve which would ace most players, and he's hitting it at the player's the server's shoelace. And that ball's going out. So many times he hits the ball and he just guides it to the baseline. And the corner of the baseline, Nadal, I think, is a really nice guy too, but I get bored of him winning on the clay so often. I get bored of his mental tics. And the same with Djokovic. The number of times they bounce the ball, it's a lot better, but that counts against them, how much they do that.
Yes, I'm with you on that one. So let me ask you a question, Jim. Outside Federer, from the big four, who is your favorite?
I would say, and this is because of where I come from, I would probably say Andy Murray, though I find it very hard watching him sometimes. It is frustrating. His body language is so poor. I think he's one of these players who is probably really nice off the court and is just an animal on the court and like a bit of a sport child. But what a great player. It's not just power with him. He can get cute angles. He does drop shots. He does lobs. He's a thinker. You'll be watching him and he's doing terribly. You'll go and make yourself a bowl of Rice Krispies in the kitchen and you'll come back and he's figured out and he's turned the game around and he's won 4 games in a row. He's not in my top 10, but I think his achievements and comeback from injuries, as all the top 4 have come back from injury too, is amazing. So, yeah, I would say Federer, Djokovic, Murray, then Nadal, but I think they're all great. Yeah.
Yes, and I actually love Rice Krispies too.
More than Andy Murray.
More than Andy Murray for sure. That's a great choice, man.
David, it's interesting because I think one of those quiz where they ask many players like who is more funny, for example, and I was very surprised because most of them said it was Henry Murray.
I read that
we were all the time saying, "Oh, this guy looks so boring."
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah. And in the end, everyone was saying like, "Oh man, he's so funny and he's always pranking and blah blah blah." So
it's the quiet ones you have to watch out for. And Lender was just the same. He seemed to have no humour in his playing days. But if you saw the latest YouTube conference, he's a funny guy. And Antonio, what's your favourite cereal? Because we need to discuss the big issues here. Well, David and I are Rice Krispies men. What about you?
Oh, for cereals, I love Milo.
Milo?
The chocolate.
It's the chocolate one.
Yeah.
I used to eat that
Are
stuff
they
when I was a
like
kid.
Cocoa Pops? Are they like Cocoa Pops?
Cocoa Pops.
Yes, it's like some small
Yeah.
balls, and I love to mix Milo with normal cornflakes.
Oh wow, he's going
Yes.
Wow.
to a new level.
I think we should edit out everything apart from this bit of the conversation. This is the good stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to shoot a few more names so we can keep the flow. So in girls, another player that I like very much, and I know Jim like her as well, and she's definitely on my list of top 10 in women, I think. Sharapova? Jim?
Well, what can you say about her? Really,
Do you
she
like-
divides her.
She was one of
She
your
divides
favorites?
Yeah, you read me like a book. I like her. A lot of people don't because of the grunting. Maybe here's a theory: you don't mind a player grunting if you like them anyway. And
Yeah.
if a player you don't like grunts, you don't like the grunting. I think what I like about her is I find that her shots kind of match mine. I've got a big backswing. I don't grunt, but I think she stays near the baseline. And it's sometimes with your favorite player, you can't say exactly why you like them, but maybe, and you could edit this out later, maybe it's because I just think she's quite attractive looking.
Hey!
Probably not the best reason a favorite player, but she's easy on the eye, I think.
I'm with you. We cannot edit this out because for me it's Wozniacki.
Yeah.
There you go. That's why she's one of my faves because she's very cute and I like her game as well.
And for me, Serena. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey,
No,
we're not here to judge you, man. We're not here to judge you.
no.
I like Jana
I'm with you,
Novotná.
man.
I didn't find her attractive looking. I'm sure lots of people would. Sadly, she's dead now, but I thought she was a great player and unusual in women in that she served and volleyed, which was very unusual. She's definitely one of my favourite players. Kim Clijsters too, I like, and I'm very glad
She was
she's back.
good.
I hope she
was good.
hope
Yeah,
she's successful. Everyone loves a comeback.
they
Yeah,
do.
that's true.
Yeah,
Comeback stories are nice.
Radwanska was also very nice.
Yes.
Beautiful tennis.
Kerber is when
She was spectacular, especially when she was on top for a year or so, and then now she...
What about Halep?
Yeah, I like Halep.
Yes, this is a
Because she's-
favorite of all time for Anton, you know, of the girls.
Yes.
We're still talking about tennis, yeah?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I like her. She's a fighter. And
Yeah, she's a big
bit
fighter.
she's a bit different. She's Romanian, so I think there's a bit of feistiness beneath the surface there, and she stands up to the big players.
Yes.
And I like her.
Anton, tell Jim and tell everybody, how did you start liking Halep?
Jim.
What was the turning point?
Halep is the twin of my sister. I posted somewhere like a photo of Halep and a photo of my sister. Like I even text Halep and I said, "Hey, my sister is just your twin."
Exactly.
Did she reply? She probably thought you were sending a photo of her rather than your sister.
Yeah.
She did not reply. To be honest, I don't even know if she reads. Maybe it's like some marketing or.
Let me add to the story. Antonio texted Halep with the picture of her sister to see if he, finally got,
Yeah.
maybe they would
I
meet
use
one
my
day.
sister for.
Use the sister for other purposes.
Would that not be wrong? What,
Very
getting
wrong.
connected?
Very
Yeah,
right.
it would.
Very right.
I don't know where this conversation is going.
It's pretty weird.
No, but honestly, I really like Halep because she fights until the end.
An amazing
She doesn't
player.
have much power, but she's a fighter, and
Yeah.
I have
Is
connection.
your sister like that too? Is your sister a fighter?
She is actually.
Yeah, she is.
There you go.
Katarina.
She is. Katarina.
Right.
She's a fighter.
Okay,
No.
so 2 or
Well,
3,
what about
so then we
current
can...
players who aren't part of the big four? Because we know
Yes.
that only really
Let's start
Federer.
there.
Anyone on the tour now who'd surprise people who aren't part of the big four, so aren't massively successful, but made your favourites list?
It's Antonio.
I would say that the second player that I would turn on the TV is Nick Kyrgios.
Oh, yes.
First is Federer, second is Kyrgios, because it's really like you never know what you're gonna expect. First of all,
It's so good.
because of his boots.
Would you choose a channel with Kyrgios on if Kyrgios was playing the same time as Federer and there were 2 channels? Which button would you go
It's a
for?
good question.
I would go for Federer.
just for the love, isn't it?
Yeah.
And because Kyrgios, you might have a great show, you might not. With Federer, you always do.
It depends. Let's put it like this: if it's like Nick Kyrgios against Nadal in one channel, and then it's like Roger Federer against a nobody, like not a nobody, like a unranked player, I would prefer to watch like a nice fight.
Good
Kyrgios,
point. Very good
Nadal,
point.
Yeah. But
I think Kyrgios is a great choice. He's like a car crash. You can't take your eyes off him, can you? He's kind of asking members of the crowd, where shall I hit the ace?
It's unbelievable.
I drop the serve. And tennis is entertainment partly, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think in keeping himself entertained, I think he plays better. So I approve of him doing that. I think it boosts his chances of winning when he becomes a circus showman. And what a showman, what a talented player.
I think that Kyrgios is in all our lists.
Yeah.
He has to be on the top. It's interesting because Federer is probably the most attractive player, and maybe of all time. He is loved to a level that is unseen, even more than Agassi. And Agassi was loved to a level that was incredible. But you can put Federer versus Kyrgios on the same match in where are all the eyes set on?
Kyrgios.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. The guy has the drama, has the shots, has the moods, has the looks, has the game. If he started dominating tennis, then I think he would probably become the most loved.
So what is missing? Why is he not in Grand Slam finals, Grand Slam semi-finals?
His personality, isn't it? Some people can say it's maybe fear of failure when he really takes it seriously. That could be one reason. What about you, Antonio? What would you say?
I think he's been better now. I think he's upgrading, and I think one of the main reasons is, as Jim was saying, he's having more fun lately. I think more connection brought him to be more committed. More connection with other players, more connection with the crowd, more connection with the game.
Yes, and now the fires in Australia made him a bit more serious about life as well. He's changing, we hope.
I think he changed something, really. I really feel he changed something.
So do you think that when the world goes back to normal, if it ever does, will he start having better results?
Yeah, I think he has a chance,
I think he might be one of these players who hopefully wins a Grand Slam, but I think he might be a kind of one or two Grand Slam kind of champion at best. A bit like Marat Safin, who's another one of my favourite players. I loved him, but he had a lot of things going on in his private life, a lot of distractions.
Yes. He was too handsome, man. He was very attractive.
Yeah, he was. He turned up at tournaments with one girl on each arm, wearing a Russian naval uniform. He was a bit mad, you know? You'd see him in the corridor and say, "Where are you going?" He'd say, "I'm going to climb a mountain," and he really would. There's some crazy stories about Marat Safin.
Wow.
But I always thought it'd be nice if Kyrgios was kidnapped by someone like John McEnroe, who just forced him to train and just buckle down and not go to the pub the night before a Wimbledon last 16 match, which he did fairly recently. I think even McEnroe, if he kidnapped him, you can't tame a wild horse like him. But two similar players to Kyrgios, who I put in my list, who I was considering putting in my list, Gael Monfils, again, mad shots.
Well done.
Never quite know what you're getting. And he's one of my favourite players just outside. But one who did appear in it, right at the bottom of my list, and I don't think either of you will like him, perhaps. Maybe surprise me. Fabio Fognini. He's not a power player. He's a touch player. He's a bit mad. He'll have arguments at changeovers. But I think he's a joy to watch when he's playing well. And he has had the odd great result against Nadal and the big boys too. Against Andy Murray, he's beaten him in some massive matches.
Yes.
So Fognini just makes my top 10.
Fognini is almost like a Spaniard swordsman. Yeah. You know, he has a sword and he whips the ball.
Yeah, he's like that.
He doesn't
even...
Zorro.
So easy when he's playing well.
It's one of these underachievers. His level is so high.
Yeah.
He just can't keep it up.
On his shot, sometimes so little backlift, and he seems to hold the ball on his strings for a long time.
It's unbelievable.
And the ball just melts into his strings and goes deep, and he wins the points. And you think, how did he do that?
With bullets, man.
Bruce Lee, a 1-inch punch.
Yeah,
it's a bit
that's
like that.
it. Done. It's spectacular. Yeah, you chose two guys. Fognini and Monfils are a joy to watch. Monfils is almost on my top 10 because he's just
Almost made
amazing.
mine. Yeah. Love watching.
He's even better than Djokovic at retrieving balls. He's more elastic. If he had the gas that Djokovic has.
I think Djokovic is just that bit fitter. His body language is just that a lot bit better because Monfils often looks like he's ready for a stretcher after a long rally.
It's like he's all the time. I see him always like that. But then he's against, back in the rally, but he's always it's unbelievable. Yeah. Okay, so top 10 on your list. Men and women, or you can mix them up. It's up to you.
All right. I'll go first if that's
I'm very
all right.
curious.
Okay, sure.
I actually had, and maybe we'll discuss this later, they were all men. I know this is terrible, but I almost see men's tennis as a different sport. I love women's tennis, and I'm more similar to a female player in terms of my style. So although I had my favourite female players, Chris Evert-Lloyd, Jana Novotná, Justin N, Kim Clijsters, Venus Williams, great athleticism, real grace and style. So they're my favourites. But number 10, Fabio Fognini.
Okay.
Number 9, Goran Ivanisevic. Number 8, John McEnroe. Number 7, Nick Kyrgios. Number 6, Marat Safin. Number 5, Jimmy Connors. Number 4, we haven't mentioned him all evening. Okay, he's Argentinian. He's not a short lad.
You got our reaction.
I love Juan Martin Del Potro.
Oh, yes.
It's such a shame again with injury curtailing him. But I think on his day, when he's playing at his best, I think he's the best player in the world. But it's just getting to playing his best on hard courts like in Indian Wells, I think, a year ago. Even with his backhand not as good as it was because of his 2 wrist operations. He can hit the ball on either wing so hard. I think he's a great player. So he's number 4. Roger Federer, number 3.
Oh, wow. I didn't expect that.
No.
I am loving your top 10.
I do love Federer. So who's number 2 and who's number 1? Is Bjorn Borg number 2?
Borg?
Bjorn Borg first got me into tennis, so he's number 2. I love his athleticism. I love his 2-set comebacks. He'd be 2 sets to love down and would come back and win it. And I love the fact he's totally different from me. He's calm. He's got ice in his veins. And number 1, this person reignited my love for tennis. We've mentioned him before, Andre Agassi.
Oh, wow, I didn't know. We've been doing this show for a while. We've been playing tennis for years, and I've never knew that.
It was a secret love, but not anymore.
Wow. And funny, you said that you almost didn't like his personality so much, but he's there on the top.
I love his play so much, and best book on tennis I've ever read. I think you've got it too, David. Open. Great, very open book, as the book says.
Great book, yes. I loved your top 10. I don't know if I can put it from 10 to 1, almost, but I'm definitely going to give it a try.
Give it a go.
Okay, so... Oh, but I wish I had the 10 until the 1 like you did. It was so exciting to hear like that.
Me too. I will not rank it 10 to 1, but I will just say those who influenced more and those that I like the most to watch. So...
we're ready.
Yeah, it's going to be some repetition, of course.
Sure.
Boris Becker, Steffi Graf. I love to watch Team play.
Oh, Team!
Well, yeah, cool, yeah.
Yeah, I really love to watch him, and I have been following him since he was really young.
Yeah, I was going to add that Antonio told me about Tim in the beginning. We didn't even know about Tim, and he was already in love with him.
Yeah, and...
He discovered him.
Yeah, he did.
I'm a scout. No.
He is a scout.
Yeah, actually, I love to watch newcomers, and I'm always...
he loves it. He used to text me, David, do you see this guy?
I discovered Nadal.
Oh, wow.
I discovered Nadal at Wimbledon. He was just 17, and he was playing a British player. And my God, even in the knock-up, he was trying to win every point. So I said, that bloke is going to go far. He was just a boy.
Mm-hmm. So, wow, that's a good discovery, too.
We have to separate this quote here. Jim discovered Nadal.
Yeah, for sure.
I should get some commission.
You should definitely
for
do.
Sure.
Okay,
so
more.
Yeah, so I was saying Team, and Federer, of course, would be my number 1.
Number 1, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Number 1.
One that I didn't watch because I was not watching tennis by then, but McEnroe afterwards.
Yes, there's something attractive about him, isn't it?
And there's something. And I think I also create some emotions listening to McEnroe
Yes.
commentating
Well said,
and
man.
everything and watching him. So I became a fan.
Yeah, that's valid.
Very valid.
Yes.
Very. And he's just very attractive personality, and he's really fun to watch. So, are you missing anybody?
I would say Venus Williams as well.
Venus Williams, absolutely.
Venus Williams.
Yeah, she's one of my favorite female
Yeah.
players too. Antonio, you mentioned Team. What about one of Team's main rivals, Tsitsipas? Did you think about him? Do you prefer Team to Tsitsipas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I prefer Team to Tsitsipas, definitely. But they are two incredible players, and I think it's gonna be like so many great fights
Between them.
I hope so. Team is quite calm, isn't he? He's quite calm,
Yeah.
and Tsitsipas is quite, very fiery, really, isn't he?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So they're quite contrasting, and Zverev is cut from the same cloth as Tsitsipas. He can lose his temper.
Yes, he can.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I like him more than Tsitsipas also.
Team has this feeling about him. You can hear on the interviews and even in the match. You feel that he would be a really nice friend.
You could go to the pub with him, couldn't you? And
Yes, he's so
he would buy you a
sweet.
pint.
He's
Yeah.
soft. You cannot not like a heart like that. So that's it.
David, have you done it? Have you written your top 10 in
Well,
order?
as we speak, it's difficult, but I'll try to put it into the 10, yeah? I love that you did that, Jim. I've tried my best. The difficult part is that it's so difficult to put some ahead of some. They're almost like the same thing. But I'll go with the girls first, and the names that I can bring back, and I'm going to try to go with from the least to the number one, yeah? So I would say Sharapova, Hingis, Bencic, Serena, Nali, Azarenka, Wozniacki, and do you guys want to guess my favorite of all time in girls? You will never guess.
Is it Heather Watson?
Oh, it's Conta.
It's
too obvious.
We should be Michel Brito, the Portuguese. She doesn't even play tennis anymore.
We haven't mentioned any Portuguese players, have we? Sousa from the men.
Yeah, Sousa. We will get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But
can you give us a clue? Give us a clue for
She's
your number
Asian.
one.
Yeah. She's Asian.
She's Asian.
But not from China.
Is it Zai Lu?
Xu Wei.
Xu Wei, there you go.
Guys, go and watch Xu Wei play tennis. You've never seen anything like it. She understands the physics. She doesn't have technique, but the way she plays and her personality combined is the most beautiful thing I've seen on a tennis court in my whole life. She's wonderful, beautiful, and her heart full of joy in life, and the way she plays tennis, it's unlike. Just go to your YouTube and type in Shui best shots, and you're going to be astonished by the quality and the beauty of her game. Check her out.
I will.
Okay, so the guys, Washington and Chang are down there. Roddick.
Oh, we didn't even
How
talk
could I forget him?
Yes.
How could I forget? I love Roddick.
Roddick is awesome.
You surprised me. I wouldn't have thought he'd be one of your favourite. I would have thought he'd be one of your least favourite. You know, a serve is a big part of his game.
True. When the tennis world lost Agassi and Sampras, there was a bit of a
vacuum.
Yeah, vacuum. I mean, we had Hewitt and some good players, of course, Davydenko. There's really good players there, but they were not on the level of these. Nalbandian, yes. How couldn't you like him? He had double-hander as well, was kind of more similar to Agassi. Not completely, but then he had a great serve, it's true. Maybe that's when I started liking serves a bit more before Federer came along. But yeah, Roddick is there definitely, and he's...
What I like about Roddick, just very brief, is he looks like he's gone to an American college party and had a few Budweisers, and then he's wandered out with his baseball cap, changed into some tennis clothes, and he just looks like so normal. So I loved him.
Yes,
he could be an actor of American Pie. Those movies.
Exactly. I know who you're thinking of. I can't remember the names. It's Stifler. Stifler.
Exactly. There's one guy that is just so similar to him, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Stifler, right? Something like that.
Stifler.
Yeah, he definitely deserves to be on the top. Then after Roddick, Monfils is definitely there, and Djokovic is there as well, somewhere there, maybe just under Monfils. Yeah. Or maybe under Roddick. I don't know. I'm very confused about Djokovic. Del Potro is there as well. And now the final 3 or 4, it's the hardest thing to choose.
Potro's there. Brilliant.
What? Del Potro?
Del Potro's in your list.
Oh, he's a sweetheart, and he has a game of
He's a
the
secret love.
ages.
He's a secret love for you because I didn't think you liked him.
Oh,
This is amazing.
he's beautiful.
I'm learning a lot about you tonight.
Yeah,
David.
we're learning about each other, man. I wouldn't say you were
Yeah.
Agassi, number one Agassi. And yes, Del Potro is the way he interacts with people. I just love that guy. And then his forehand. And he's persistent coming back from all the adversity of... I mean, that guy would have won so many Grand Slams if he didn't have that. We would be loving him even more these days if it wasn't for the injuries. Oh, but so Del Potro, thumbs up.
I agree.
Medvedev comes in now. That guy got me instantly in the moment that he said, fuck you to the crowd. When he said, fuck you to the crowd... He got me. I was like, okay, I love this guy.
I considered him, but he hasn't been playing long enough.
I agree with you.
Give him another couple of years, but a great choice. He has to earn it.
Yes.
He has to earn.
Kyrgios, number 3. Kyrgios is jumping up, man. And he might end up my favorite at the end of his career. Who knows? Maybe even will top Federer. Because he's just the villain, man. And villains are so much fun compared to the heroes. Agassi, number 2. And unfortunately... You guys know who is the guy at the top. Me and Antonio.
Dan Evans. Dan Evans.
João Sousa.
João Sousa. But it's interesting because the three of us, we have Agassi there and we have Federer there. We
they
have
were the
similar
top two.
tastes.
They were the top two,
They were
really,
the top
weren't they?
two.
If we're compiling our lists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the episode of the favorite players. We could talk forever, but I'm going to put you guys on the spot to finish the episode of today. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Almost ready, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So before we go, you can step out of this answer if you don't want to burn your reputation. But tell me 3 of your most unfavorite players of all time.
That is a great question. You have put me on the spot because I wasn't expecting this.
I knew it.
Number 3, Martina Navratilova.
Okay. Wow.
But I will qualify that. I didn't like her as a player because she won everything. At the time she was playing, I really liked Chris Lloyd. So she was a rival of hers. And Martina, for many years, just won everything, which was very boring. And she wore glasses, which made her look like a lab technician, which wasn't a great look. I must say, since she has retired, I admire her more and I appreciate her game more. She was a serve and volleyer, which is unusual. She's a very good pundit. And she's lost the glasses and she's better now than she did 30 years ago. And I think she's got a very good heart as well. Number 2, I'm going to discuss you, David, and possibly you, Antonio. Leighton Hewitt.
Oh, wow.
Connors, who is a very hated player who used to graft for every point. He had no big weapon, so he had to really work for every point. And Leighton Hewitt was the same. But for some reason, I love Connors, but Hewitt making a meal of every point. And I've never warmed to him. I just preferred other players, really. But I know he's a very popular player and he shouldn't be crying into a soup listening to this.
Well, not one of my favorites either.
But number 1, Serena Williams. She wins everything. She makes such a meal of it. She'll do an incredible shot. She's an incredible player. And then she'll look as if she's got the weight of the world on her shoulders.
Yeah.
Just the way she trudges to her chair after a game, like someone who's been told off at primary school. She's not my favourite, but what a player. Amazing power. She's got a serve that would trouble a lot of men. So good is her serve. But you can't explain what you do and don't like, but she's my least favourite. I feel bad for saying it.
No,
please, someone else start talking now to make me feel less bad.
So I don't have a top ranking, but
you have players you do not like. We all do.
Yeah, sure.
We all do.
I agree with Serena Williams. I don't like the attitudes. Usually I don't like a player because of the attitudes.
Yeah,
mostly.
exactly.
Or I don't like players that take things too seriously. For example, I don't like Batista Agut.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like he's always so serious.
Yeah.
He looks like dictator sometimes. Like something like
he has this face.
There is something very like never smiling and never like a nice guy to the. There is something there that I don't like. I remember that I used to dislike a lot Birdish when he had that episode with Almagro.
Yeah.
You guys remember?
Oh, I was always making fun of Birdish all the time.
So, yeah. But Birdish is another example. Like, after some years, I started liking him.
Definitely.
I started feeling that he was a nice guy.
Yes.
It was just one bad day or one or two bad days in his career, and I ended up liking him. But yeah, so
It's good that you
yeah.
guys are bringing up even players that you didn't like at a certain time, and then you understand them better
Yeah,
these days, but it's still very valid.
One name I forgot, by the way, 'cause I'm sure he's a very nice bloke, but I never liked Stefan Edberg. There, I've said it. I've said it now.
Yeah, you said it. We're burning, man. We're gonna
It's
be
off my
burned
chest.
alive. Those are good choices, guys. Are you not forgetting anybody? No.
Tim Henman.
That's
Try
Antoni's
the Tim.
favorite. Antoni didn't say it because he doesn't want to be embarrassed.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, and
I'm talking about a different Tim Henman, Antonio. I'm talking about a different one. A friend I used to know.
Maybe you guys have hard feelings because Tim Henman beats Roger Federer on Wimbledon.
He did. And isn't it amazing to think that he did that? It's incredible to think he beats Federer.
You know, back in the days when I was in university, I used to play virtual tennis with
computer
my
games.
friends. Tim Henman was on the game, and I used to
Can
choose
you believe
Tim
that
Henman
choosing to play with
or
Tim
Moya.
Henman?
Carlos Moya or Tim Henman.
Carlos Moya,
Which
I
are
understand, okay? But
two
Do you
different
know,
styles.
I nearly put Carlos Moya in my top 10 list. I did like Carlos Moya, but
Yeah, he was.
you loved Tim Henman so much you couldn't choose him.
Man, didn't you have Agassi to choose in the computer game virtual tennis?
No.
No,
Actually,
Agassi?
no.
All right. I squeezed a little bit more of hate out of
What
you
about
guys.
you, though?
Yeah,
Lucas,
exactly.
What about
Oh,
you?
I am-
You're
I am-
not proud of this.
I am full of
You
hate,
managed
guys.
to dodge the bullet.
No,
Exactly.
You managed to
not
dodge
running.
the bullet.
I'll head
not running away.
straight into the bullets, no problem. I actually have many more names than you guys. I'll hit a few, okay? I agree with Serena. She's my favorite and my unfavorite. It's a mixed bag, isn't it? She's a great player, but then I don't like her very much. I don't like Sibulkova. I don't have any hate, but Konta is just... I can't bear to watch her serve. I have to look left or right when she's serving. I can't.
It's her mannerisms, isn't it? It's
Oh,
a
come
kind of
on.
like a preparation.
It's unattractive. And then, yes, the way she speaks is not really my type of person. I don't have any hate towards her, but there you have it. I agree with Antonio. We made a lot of fun of him back in the day. He always looked very like military, like a soldier and something like that.
Yes.
Not really very attractive, but then I understood that he was actually a very good guy. Then,
Do you know what I didn't like about Burditch?
yeah.
It was his hat. I think it was boring. I'm actually wearing a kind of a Burditch
Yes,
hat.
you
at
are,
the
man.
moment.
What the hell?
I didn't like Burditch wearing it. I just thought he looked better with the hat off
He had good
at the
hair.
end of the match.
Maybe you would like him more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He had good hair. He had no reason to wear a hat. I've got a reason to wear a hat.
Yes,
Burditch
exactly.
didn't.
You gotta have a reason to wear a hat. I don't like Verdasco at all. He's very aggressive and he's full of testosterone.
Yeah.
There's no
And
control
he's
there.
not very nice to ball girls, is he?
No,
very
he's
nice.
not. Raonic is not very attractive. I'm not against him, but he's a bit
Yeah.
boring. He looks more like a
Oh, that's
teacher.
true.
With Raonic, it's like his arms, his serving arm is round the wrong way. He has such an extreme grip on the
Yes,
serve. I feel like he's put his arm on back to front.
it's crazy, isn't it?
And,
It looks weird, man.
I object to that.
Yeah,
I object
exactly.
to that.
And now, final two. I definitely like Murray as a player, but very boring on court. I think outside the court, he would be a very good friend. He seems like a really nice guy. So,
Yeah.
last one, and the least, my unfavorite player of
It's
all.
quite a long list, isn't it?
I'm sorry, guys. I had to I'm definitely gonna cut a few. But my unfavorite of all time, believe it or not, is my nationality, João Sousa.
Oh.
I mean, if
Yeah.
you understand what he does and why
Yeah.
he does, he's just so unattractive. It's very difficult
Yeah.
to like him. I think he has a good heart, but he's just, I know, it's like you, I don't know.
Yeah, there are numerous episodes of
Numerous.
like fighting without a reason with
Oh
the
my God,
umpire because
yes.
he's losing, or
He-
just like fighting with himself so many times. Like
Yeah.
oh, it's so unattractive, yes. And then Grant, loud,
emotional. Yeah,
yeah, emotional. And Grant, I mean, he goes really high.
he's not a bad player. He would
Nope.
win so much if he was not emotional. So many matches just because of emotions. I mean, tennis in the end, when you're talking about top 100, is all about who deals with emotions. And of course, like there's the genius. We're top 3, top 4. But the rest is so much about emotions. I think you guys agree, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
We feel like that about Murray in this country. He fights himself and he almost eats himself. And you think
Murray's
that
a good
can't do him
example.
any good. But yeah.
Yeah.
So we started this episode about our top 10 favorites and who we loved, and it's kind of turned into who we hate, and it's been quite good fun, hasn't it? Really,
it's a horrible ending. I wanted to bring a bit of a dark side to this conversation at the end.
Okay.
At least we talked about a lot of players. 1 hour and 40 minutes. This has been the longest episode we've ever done. It makes sense. Favorites. So who doesn't want to talk about favorites?
I was a young man when this episode started. That's how long it's been going on for.
I can see the gray hair coming, man. You actually have gray hair.
I didn't feel that it was 1 hour and 40, which means we had fun.
Yeah, it was great, and we're very.
I really enjoyed it. It's really nice meeting you, Antonio.
Yeah, I've been bugging Antonio forever to join one of these chats because Antonio is a lover of tennis, and he always speaks to me, just like me and Eugene. We're always talking about tennis, and I thought he has to come in. So thanks for coming, Antonio.
So you'll join us next time, yeah?
Thank you very much, guys.
He will definitely join us again.
I had a great time with you guys, and it was my pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
And it was nice to know you, Jim, because, now I know who you are.
Yeah, now there's a face.
Yeah, likewise.
Good stuff.
Yeah, you too, yeah. That was really fun, really good.
Good.
And I'll speak to you both soon.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm going to try and get out of this.
Yeah, it's the button to switch off the phone call.
Yeah. I'll just cross out of it.
All right. Even the cross is not going to work.
I'll shut the computer down and that will work.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah.
It's the only way you're getting out of this conversation, man. All right, Jim.
Have a nice dinner. Stay safe, both of you.
You too.
Stay safe.
You too, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
You guys.
Ta-ra now. Bye.